We are back with this week's special guest on Willow Talk, Michael Kasprowicz, a legend of Australian cricket and Queensland cricket as well. I've got to mention that. Queensland doesn't get enough mentions on this podcast. It's always talking about how good WA is and Had's having a whinge about New South Wales. But Casper, thanks for joining us, mate. Really appreciate your time. And we're on the cusp of a test series against New Zealand. So let's hop straight back to '05 and a pretty hot side you're involved with. What are your memories of touring a place like New Zealand?
Well, thanks very much for the intro. I'm flat out remembering last week normally, but I'll... yeah, look, I know that it was a hugely successful series. We won, of course, the first international T20 match. We played that too. Then we won, I think, the Test series 3-0 and then 2-0. 2-0 and then 5-0 in the one days. So it was a really successful trip. It was a good fun trip as well. Look, my memories are just, it was actually everyone playing, really well the whole way through. It was a good team set up, it was a lot of fun.
Were you on this trip, Hads? You went the Ashes tour in '05 as a kind of standby for Gilly, but did you make this one, or are you back over here playing a bit of Shield?
No, I didn't make that one, but I'm glad we've got Casper at a distance, actually. He bullied me, him and Vic and Haydos and Simo for the first part of my career, yeah.
There's some big humans involved there.
Huge humans, huge. But I remember, I think, early 2000s, and they were bullying us once again at the Gabba. We only signed in our hotel room for 2.5 days and spent that night at City Rowers. But I remember touring with Casper in 2005 and coming back and saying, mate, they're good blokes, these Queenslanders. Like, you've got to go in the change room after the game when New South Wales and Queensland play and have a beer with them and realise they're only trying to get under your skin because, Casper, you spent the best part of 5 years bullying me.
Oh, look, that's nice. I'm very flattering of you, Hads, I've got to say. And considering a lot of when you say the bullying, there was a lot of conversation down at the batting end. And, of course, when you've got the ball in your hand, you're right up the other end. You've got your back to it, or you're down at fine legs. So I can't say I was responsible for really getting stuck into you verbally, but any time chance with the ball, absolutely. And I want to just point out, I'm actually flattered also that you thought, you're surprised that the Queenslanders were good blokes. It is surprising because it was just a granted, I would have thought.
Hey, Casper, who was the leading conversationalist then of that team?
Pick.
Well, depends in a general sense. I know Matthew Haddin used to say about it, but he was too busy away with the Australian side, obviously, and maybe I'll come back to him in a second. But the other thing, I guess there's always plenty of energy, is the word, from a Jimmy Marr. Or an Andrew Simons, just sort of, around that sort of gully point, maybe second slip. In through there was, just, like I said, the energy. It was just got the batsman thinking about something other than watching the ball.
What were you being accused of, Hads, in terms of you as a person or an individual walking the face of earth?
No, I was just accused of walking on the field against Queensland. But I tell you what, it wasn't all one way.
What, as in, what are you doing out here?
Well, it was some pretty fierce battles at the time, and I remember just starting my first class career, but it gave you a great insight to what first class cricket then meant to the States. Queensland at that time were dominating. They had guys on the fringe of the Australian team, and we had the whole Australian team from the New South Wales setup. So it was some great rivalry, but it was a great introduction to what first class cricket was all about.
I bet. Casper, just back to that '05 series, because we picked that one out because it was an amazing time for Test cricket, because obviously what happened a few months later in England happened with that the Ashes series for the ages. But that tour of New Zealand, that lineup that Australia had, and you were a big part of it. You were taking wickets for fun in this Test lineup. You had McGrath, Warne, Gillespie, yourself. You had Brett Lee in and out of the team. It was you and Brett Lee charging in for that extra pace spot, and you were keeping Brett Lee out of the squad at that time. What are your memories of that particular period?
Oh, look, it was great. I think that's why the fast bowler is always really close in every side, and there's a real respect is what was going on in that with that sort of bunch. In that, where everyone knows that you're trying hard, and I suppose in a lot of ways for me, I sort of understood my place, where you fit. I was never first picked, but I managed to find a way in that Australian side over a 10-year period. I think it was 13 times. I was in and out of that Australian squad for 13 times over 10 years. And I was introed at a function down in Melbourne a few years ago as the guy who had more recalls than Daihatsu. So, but I think that gave me an insight and maybe a really unique perspective of that Australian sides, where you actually had a look at the team and a bit like your own kids. When you're around them every day, you don't notice change. But if you go away for a week, then you come home, bang, things are, certainly when they're young, you really do notice it. And I think with that Australian side, I had a real good sort of insight into the people, I suppose, and the theme, I suppose, the themes that were going on and also the tone. So that was why, I talk about 2005, the Ashes series there were some things that popped up there that before that whole series, we never spoke about.
What do you mean? In what regard?
Well, put it this way, it was the first time in that 10-year period I've ever heard the word luck used in the Australian dressing room. And the only team, when you think about it, the only team that talks about luck happens to be the loser. They talk about being unlucky. Whereas the Australian cricket team never required, it didn't need luck, just went out there and did it. And I think where we did have some things happen, maybe Edgbaston, second test, right hand off the bat at the time, law 34.1 MCC laws of cricket, not out, thanks Billy Bowden. However, there was, I think, Caddo had a shocking LB, and they're just those little things. And if you start to feel unlucky, guess what? You are. And I think that was just something there. I don't know if you found that too, Hads, but it was just they played out of their skin essentially, and we felt like it was bloody weird because we felt like we needed things to go our way. That hadn't been the case before.
Well, it was an interesting tour for me. That was the first full tour I'd been on with this great Australian team. And I've been on many tours now as a player and part of the squad, but I've never, ever felt energy of a whole country against one team that I did in the 2005. But going back to that, Kasper, was it the loss Australia needed? Is that a true statement, or is it one of those, no, you never want to win, lose, you want to win all the time?
Of course you want to win all the time. And it's not like a football season whereby you've got, it's the loss you had to have to get, just to slap you about so that you're right for the finals. And maybe that was it. It was just that sort of, and there was plenty of times, because there was plenty of times that the Australian side were under the pump in lots of places, not just in the subcontinent. But you found a way to fight your way through. And the fact of the matter is we just came across this England side who on paper were nowhere near as good, but somehow played out of their skin and found an opportunity. And like Andrew Flintoff, he didn't have a series like that ever again.
With the net sessions, and Hads has always said about the intensity of international cricket in preparation is unlike nothing you experience at state level for good reason, because you've got a higher calibre of player and they're more cutthroat and they know what they need to do to prepare. How did you find that? Like, obviously we see press conferences, we see what goes out on the middle, but in between test matches, both in New Zealand and trying to get it done there, and you and Brett Lee going for a spot, and then over at the Ashes with all that, the whole country against you, what were some of those net sessions like, and practice sessions, trying to get everyone on the same page, pushing in the right direction?
Well, I remember we played some one-dayers first, didn't we, Hads? Where Bangladesh, and some people had some birthday parties in Cardiff, and some people stayed out all night and ended up not playing. Andrew
stretching
Simons.
their hammies on a wheelie bin,
that was the one. Yeah, he anyway. But it was sort of one we were under the pump right from the start, and really feeling like, geez, it's not quite there. I remember, and it was even like in the tour games, and there's some media around, and little, I guess as players, you're looking to other players for just advice or help or assistance. You're looking at obviously the coaches that are there, and we were quite fortunate where we had Merv Hughes, who was over there in his tour. He was a selector of that Australian side at the period of time as well. He was over there, and so he's come to training, which was a great resource. Former great Australian bowler coming here. I know Dizzy was feeling just off a little bit at the time, and anyway, we sort of thought, oh great, we'll get Merv, we'll line him up, and great next session, just before Edgbaston. It was before, I remember the Nets going, just before the game, all set. I know Binger was playing, Dizzy was playing, and also McGrath before he stepped on the ball. So they were all sort of lined up there as a team, but Merv was sort of all set to, you know, as a resource. Dizzy went over looking for Merv, and all of a sudden Merv wasn't there, and we couldn't find him anywhere. It's sort of a session, everyone's together. Turns out Matthew Haddin pinched him to put balls in the bowling machine for an hour, because Matthew Haddin wanted to hit in the bowling machine. He got Merv, and I'm not saying, I just think that was the wrong use of resource in that side. There was plenty of other hands to feed a ball in a bowling machine, but just those little things. There was a couple of those little Barbie things that sort of were happening, and maybe that conspired.
I thought you were going to say Merv was over at the pub across the road having a Tetley's for breakfast, so which could have been the case as well on his tour group. But how was that? Was it a rivalry with Brett Lee in those days, or was it because it's a weird situation where you're supporting each other, but you're trying to be better than the other guy?
Yeah. Oh, and for me, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. I didn't ever felt like that. I just thought if you take the opportunity, or get the opportunity. Just do your best you can. Of course, being bowling 150k an hour, it's extraordinary. As an athlete and everything he did, and knowing that what I was doing was different. It's up to the selectors to pick the teams and all that sort of stuff. And Bingham was always going to be a star. That sort of pace there. So I think for me, I never felt like that, and same with Dizzy, Pigeon, and even Sean Tate, on that tour. Tate was on that tour as well. He got a little bit injured, but the type of thing where I just found that throughout my whole career, it was all about sharing. And I know certainly for Queensland, going back to, any time to the Queensland team in the 19 seasons I played for Queensland, it was all about going back and just sharing everything to every young fast bowler coming through, and it sort of often makes you a little bit better yourself.
Casper, you talk about sharing. We're an amazing group of fast bowlers at the moment. We Stark, Cummo and Hazelwood, but they've been really resilient also. We haven't seen a lot of turnover in players for some time. Is it something we need to start to look at with this three? Do we need to broaden the umbrella a little bit to find some more?
We sort of began doing that anyway, aren't we, with all the one-dayers and the T20s, all the other competitions. But Test cricket's Test cricket. You want to play best players all the time there. I realise that, we could, give some people a go. But what I'd love to see is all those, the bench, if you like, everyone really put pressure on the players by just dominating. Go and dominate Shield cricket. Just through pure performance. So, and I guess that's the other thing. Back in the day, before the bowling, the concept of bowling workloads was more so just your player bowling, 1, 2 and 3 were picked. With 1 or 2 or 3 got injured, then number 4 went up. And it was just that sort of that was the rotation policy. Yeah, it was. So I'm not saying you've got to get back to that, because obviously the sports scientists have got themselves a seat in the dressing room, got themselves some importance in there, and that's what we're sort of, that's what we're doing these days. But mind you, I should say, the fast bowls today are so much better than I think we ever were. Not only in the fitness and strength, but I'm just loving watching, as you said, the combo. Having three Australian Test fast bowlers, each with 250 wickets, is just an extraordinary moment in time, and something we've got to celebrate.
Absolutely, and it'll be over before we know it. So you will look back on this era like we do those lineups that you were a part of, Casper, as well, and how good they were and how much depth they had to them. I did read something somewhere once that said that not only were sports scientists coming into the dressing room, maybe in your era as well, but burgeoning journalistic careers were forged on tour by certain players who brought out a newsletter when you were on tour. Can you fill us in some of the details with this little rumour?
Well, I think it's in the days before the Batuta Advocate. It was really Yeah, it was an opportunity. I think maybe done out of boredom over in India. But I did do an in-house it's a newsletter, call it a newsletter. Quality newsletter, of course. But
Quality reading.
well, I was actually had pictures as well, but it was called the Mumbai Mumbler. And the reason why I felt it was just a lot of amusing things happen in India, and you see and you read. So I thought I'd put that, and I thought if I focused on the Australian cricket team, it was all about if anyone was going to write unsolicited rubbish about the Australian team, about it may as well be us. We may as well be doing it ourselves. So at least that way, yeah. So it was great. We actually interviewed some of the players. I'm not sure you got interviewed, Hads. I think you just you maybe figured more so in the pictorial section, because you had a splinter, didn't you? Wasn't you get a stump or something?
No,
wasn't
the
this
only time I remember my first recollection.
Come on, you do remember?
No, I
You're trying to
don't,
deflect here. What was that story, Casper?
No. I just do it pictorial. So I think there was.
Okay.
Did you get a? I thought it was a splinter or something like that. Anyway, I might have found a picture of a bloke that had half a tree impaled in his leg. So I thought, I figured that might be that one. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What I can remember is the first when I was on standby, and you remember this as a player in 2001.
Yeah.
Was I was standby for the test in Calcutta. It was the first time I got exposed to Test cricket. Gilly was injured. I played the tour match before, my first experience in the subcon, and I remember running the drinks that day. And remember the crowd, Casper. There was 50,000 stadium. There's 75,000 there. And you're meant to be sitting there going, how good of opportunity is this? Mate, it'd be great to be out there playing Test cricket. And all I was thinking is, holy shit, Gilly, do not get injured before the match, because I'm not ready for this shit. Mate, what about that crowd?
It's nuts. Back in the day when Test cricket was pretty solid and well supported, as you said, it was a 50,000 seated stadium, but there was at least 75,000 bodies in there. I used to joke too that you'd be standing there in the field and you back to the crowd, but you'd sort of feel all of a sudden something hit you in the back, and it'd turn around and be a rock on the floor, or I've heard of batteries and things like that, and you turn around to sort of have a go at someone, and there's all these police. There's police the whole way around the ground, all looking at you, and they're smiling at you, and the crowd's obviously smiling at you, but so are the police, and that's just the corporate area. So just imagine. So anyway, it was good. But then it was one of I reckon the most challenging thing personally I've ever done. And the cricket you play there against the best players in the world on these conditions that don't necessarily suit certainly a fast bowler. There's no grass in the wicket. It's probably not even a living organism in it, I reckon. And I reckon that was where it was just the most challenging thing, but at the same time, possibly the most rewarding. Because ultimately you're playing cricket for Australia, representing your country, and that's what was so great about the experience.
Well, was it great bowling to Laxman and Dravid for what felt like about 8 days in that unbelievable partnership?
Yeah, that was extraordinary. It was maybe like a Flintoff or someone like that Ashes series, the best their players coming off. For India to win that game, obviously it was extraordinary, and they had to do something special, and they did. Now, we had won 16 consecutive test matches. We'd won 16 straight, and including the first test in 3 days. So Matthew Haddin scored 200. Remember Hads? He swept. That's back in the day when they could execute a sweep shot in India. So anyway, Haddin scored 200. We won in 3 days. So it wasn't certainly not arrogance at all, and Steve Waugh made sure that was the case. But it was a real confidence in the team. We're right on top here against India. We scored, maybe 50, 60, then bowled them out for 200, whatever and a bit. But enough for a follow-on, the follow-on. That old concept where you'd send the team back in when you're on top.
What's that?
Anyway, the sports scientists got rid of that one too.
Were you happy when Steve Waugh did that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what we kept doing against New South Wales at the Gabba for plenty of years.
And a reverse at the SCG.
Yeah. But you would, because the thing is that you're right on top, and then, like I said, it's not an arrogance, but it's a confidence. we actually had, I think, India about 3 for 80 odd, and I'm just round numbers, 3 for 80 odd. That's still 200 and whatever, I don't know, 150 or whatever runs behind. We got a bat again, so we're right on top, and we actually had Sachin Tendulkar in the sheds. So the next day, we've come back out. Rahul Dravid and Laxman, BVS Laxman, I think were not out overnight. Now the next day was one of the most extraordinary days because they batted the whole day and got the lead that they did. Laxman 200 over, I think Dravid 180. But when you have McGrath, Gillespie, Warne, and part-time like me as well, we ended up. I don't think there was one. I can't remember an appeal. I can't remember a half chance or a drop catch. But I don't know, Hads, it was like that, wasn't it? Every time we'd come back in after, drinks, keep going, Lions, believe in ourselves, fellas, we're doing the right thing. You came in at lunch, same deal. Just, be positive, keep going. Come back after tea, last session, and you sort of all of a sudden, I think even Matthew Haddin had a bowl. So it was just one of the more unreal days. Like not really.
Kasper, out of your 38 Test matches though, every time a touring team went to India or the subcontinent, you'd have the captain. And Kasper, you were the second name on the team list all the time. Well, what do you think that was? Do you think it was
journalism? That's why.
That too, but was it? Some people go to think, oh no, this is a tough challenge. I don't know what to. You embraced that part of the game?
Yeah, I did absolutely. I think 1998 when I went there the first time, I was. Everyone else was conveniently, perhaps they were all injured, and they didn't make it. But I think we went over there. We lost the series. First 2 Test matches, 23 tests. The first 2 tests, poor rifle. There was 2 quicks, Rifle and Kasprowicz, Warne and Gav Robertson, right? And what happened was that, Pistol got injured the first innings. So it was me and 2 spinners and a couple of part-timers. And then the second test, we had Blocker Wilson, big Paul Wilson. He made his debut. He lasted, I think, about 5 or 6 overs, and then he got injured. And so once again, I had to bowl. And so I actually lost, I reckon I lost about 10, nearly 15 kilos in about 3 weeks. And it was just, through the conditions and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, come the third test, we're playing at Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore. And I remember speaking with Javagal Srinath, who's their strike bowler. And I was just chatting to him before the game, and they'd already won the series. And I asked him, I said, mate, he was good. He was sort of talking about, all sorts of things. And I said, what about reverse swing? How's that work? And he said, look, all you got to do is keep the rough side of the ball bone dry. Because it's 40 degrees, everyone's so wet in the arms and all that. So if you keep that rough side just dry, because it's naturally wearing, there's nothing to do with any sorts of grade of sandpaper, that's for sure. And all it was simply this to keep that dry. So I actually said to the team, I said, right, this is what we're going to do. So instead of the ball going from keeper to a slip to a gully to point and every set of hands on the way, it was virtually, least hands the better. And I remember even as a bowler walking over with 2 fingers and get to mid-off and grabbing the ball in 2 fingers. And then all of a sudden we were able to swing it. 5 for 28. I got the man of the match. We won the Test match first time in 30 years. But that's laying up the answer for your question, why I was picked. I had Crash Craddock come to me. Now Crash, he was News Limited head cricket journo. Anyway, he said, Kasper, tell me, why do you like India so much? Because I always just was positive with it. It's a great experience, like I did with you guys. And I said to Crash, put it this way, mate, I'm the fashionable bowler for unfashionable tours. And straight away I knew that was, as a journo, that's going to be his headline. And it was, Kasper, I'm the fashionable bowler for unfashionable tours. So that was kind of why, and I think that was where they started doing it. They started calling me a bit of a subcontinent specialist. So every time Australia went to, to India or the choice places like Pakistan and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, they were writing about it and putting me in there. I did actually mention to him at the time, I would have enjoyed the West Indies, but I just never got picked.
Even though you made your debut against the Windies at the Gabba on your home ground.
But in the West Indies.
Last one,
No, yeah.
last one for you, Casper. Of your 38 tests, I'll give you three options. The biggest miracle that you witnessed, and maybe you might have a fourth option, but I'll out of three. The Luxman-Dravid partnership, the Billy Bowden forgetting the laws of cricket in a rather big moment at Edgbaston, or McGrath and Gillespie scoring half centuries against New Zealand at the Gabba.
I'm going to go the Luxman, Dravid one in particular. I have never had any doubt in certainly the lower order batsmen in the Australian side. What I did particularly enjoy, though, I think we all did, was Jason Gillespie's celebration of getting his 50, where he tucked the bat between his legs and started riding it like a horse.
But just on Glenn McGrath, that's a miracle, is it not?
Well, the miracle is that he's a left-hander. to go out and get a 50 in a test match using your opposite hand, Casper, that's extraordinary.
Like, seriously. It's just amazing.
Well, generally, the only time I've ever really get asked about, McGrath's batting or averages or top scores and things like that is generally from Damien Fleming, because he likes to point out that I never scored a 50 at Test cricket level. So whether you're going down the same track, I don't know. But I think, like I said, you know what, the miracle one is actually Jason Gillespie's 201 not out against Bangladesh.
Yes.
That's the one that probably top of them all.
Well, that's going to pay for his however long he lasts in cricket. He's got that for the afterlife of cricket to just go and tell stories at pubs and various events for the rest of his time on Earth. And you're a great storyteller as well, Casper. And thank you for joining us today on Willow Talk to spill a few of them. We're going to get to the bottom of this little Mumbai Mumbler or whatever it was, and who was I want to know who the Taylor Swift of that particular publication was in terms of the go-to person to get stories. Binger. Okay, yeah, cool.
I'll do really quickly. The Ashes. We had an Ashes special to the Mumbai Mumbler, and I know we stayed up in Durham. I think in a like a castle looking. It was a ghost
haunted house.
It was haunted. Yeah. So I had to obviously write a story about that because Shane Watson couldn't sleep in his own room. So I think he was with you, Hads. He came and slept in. Did he? He slept in Binger's room, and that's where I sort of pointed out that that obviously put some faces over some pictures and with the Ghostbusters wagon outside, but pointed out that that Brett Lee soothed him with comforted Shane Watson in his time of needs with a soothing back tickle.
Well, it's interesting though. You talk. You talk about the Mumbler being in-house, and this is how quick it grew.
Yeah.
You remember Goffey Bowl in that one-day game? The Mumbler grew and grew and grew, so it was all over England by the end. He bowled and Shane Watson was batting. He just goes down, boo! And did sort of a Casper the little ghost to Watto.
Yeah,
brilliant. Casper, thanks so much, mate. And it started off mainly looking at the New Zealand series, but buck of that, we had too many good stories to tell of your career. So it was good fun, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks. No worries, guys. Hey, thanks a lot. And enjoy smashing the Kiwis.
Always. Thanks, Casper.
Cheers, Casper. Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.